And welcome to another episode of Afterburners Podcast. We're finally back after being off for a month. It's really my fault. I did something weird. I got married and then I had a honeymoon. I know I've been told multiple times I shouldn't have done that. You might notice that I'm the one hosting tonight. That's also unusual. Sam, our beloved Sam, is dead. Well, not really. He's not actually dead. He just went to the Caps parade yesterday. And he texted me a picture of himself drinking like 12 beers before 9 a.m. So when he said he was still going to make our podcast, I was kind of skeptical in the first place. But I am lucky enough to be joined by three special guests. I have Tim, Pete, and Brian with me, and I'm going to allow them to give their own introductions as a little bit of a different way of hosting. So let's kick it off with Tim.
Hey guys, Tim Turner at Quantum Turner on Twitter. I'm the host of the Grapes of Draft podcast, where we drink too much wine and talk about football and other things related to it. And so thanks, Bobby, guys, for letting me come on. Looking forward to it.
And Pete is a returning guest, but Pete, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I don't think Pete's volume's on.
You got no sound, bud.
You know, Pete, before the pod started, we couldn't shut you up.
The best part is Sam's the one who edits these, so I'm just going to have to figure this out.
You know what you should do? No, you still can't hear you, Pete. We should dub in some like some Peter Griffin.
Or like Godzilla stuff. Like Pete's I really like football.
Just put in
my name is Pete.
Put in some animal noises just as he talks, just like monkey noises.
Let me see. I definitely didn't mute him, so it's definitely on his end.
Yeah,
there we go. Yeah, Pete.
All right. Hey, it's Pete Lawrence, @_ Pete Law, writer over at Dynasty League Football and Number Fire.
FYI, none of that's getting edited out. I'm leaving all of that in.
Absolutely.
You got to go with the Pete Griffin jokes then, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Brian, over to you.
Yeah, I'm Brian Haar, and I'm a writer over at DLF as well, at Brian Haar FF on Twitter, and I'm also the co-host of the Trade Addicts Pod, at Trade Addicts Pod on Twitter.
Who's your host on that? I already forgot. I apologize.
No, that's all right. It's Dynasty Outhouse, at Dynasty Outhouse.
Yep, I've had lots of interactions with him.
Yep.
Seems like a good guy.
He is, definitely.
Today, we're going to talk about the Justice League of Superflexers. So for those who don't know what it is, it's a superhero-based charity dynasty league. And I know that's shocking to everyone that I would do something superhero-based. I never do that. I hate superheroes, clearly. I didn't write a quarterback comparison article comparing them to very esoteric superheroes that no one even knows about. But the premise of this league is that everyone's playing for a different charity, and these guys are all in the league and were kind enough to sub in for Sam tonight. We're going to talk a bit about the draft, especially because this is a Superflex show, so getting into some of the strategy will be helpful for other people to hear. And we're going to get right into this. So Brian did something unusual, and at the very first pick in our draft, he took Saquon Barkley, and I wanted to give him the opportunity to defend himself to the public.
Yeah, so first things first, you can probably see the shirt if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, sorry, don't get to see our faces, our beautiful faces. But yeah, I took Barkley at 101, Saquon 01, if you will. For me, this had everything to do with my charity that I'm playing for. I am playing for an organization called Four Diamonds. It battles pediatric cancer. They raise money for pediatric cancer at the Children's Hospital in Hershey, Pennsylvania. I was a Penn State student and was involved in one of the largest dance marathons in the country while I was in school. It's known as Thon here. And some of the major networks have picked up on it. Some celebrities have donated, different things like that. But Saquon was really involved with the kids and the organization when he was here in school, as a number of the Penn State football players are. So for me, this is a situation where, I do have him ranked probably higher than a lot of people do to begin with. And then in this particular format, and because of the charity aspect of everything, it just made sense for me to go ahead and select him and ride him for the charity. He's already done a lot for the charity here while he's been in school at Penn State, and he's done a lot for our community. So I just thought it made sense given the theme of the league and everything. So it's a out of the box pick. I think most people, when they see Barkley going first overall and he hasn't played a down of football in the National Football League, I think it's, it can be comical, but for me, it was kind of an easy choice. It'd been something I'd been thinking about. And then I actually tried to move back in this draft just to, so I was planning on taking him anyways, but I thought I could get him a few spots behind and maybe pick up some additional assets, but didn't happen. So I just went ahead and took him with the first pick.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Brian, I said in the chat that I would die if you selected Barkley first overall.
You did. And you're still here.
Me. Yeah, I still am here. And he DM'd me to make sure it was okay. I said, no, I won't actually die. You can do it. I might die a little bit on the inside, but it'll be okay. Tim and Pete, give your reactions to the Barkley pick when it first happened, before you knew the charity aspect, and then also introduce the charities that you guys are playing for, because everyone is playing for very worthwhile cause in this league.
Go ahead, Pete. You talked for like 2 minutes without saying something, so I feel like you deserve it. Right now.
I actually wasn't surprised. I know Brian's a big Penn State fan. We talked during the season a little bit about Saquon, so he was hitting me up right around the 107 mark. So I figured he was trying to slide back to get him around that spot. And I, sitting at 107, I figured I was probably going to get Saquon or one of the other backs or another top wide receiver. So at that point, I just figured I'd stay put. I wasn't really surprised. It's a charity thing. It's about having fun. So I think a lot of our picks have been about that, as we've seen some of the talent that's actually sliding in the draft, which may or may not be, that we actually foresee something, or we're just picking the guys we like. So, I mean, Blake Bortles went extremely too high. But so my charity is
on my podcast and insult Blake Bortles. Wow.
The first round pick was dealt for Alex Smith, so we can and it wasn't Sal making that pick.
We do have to clarify that was not Sal who made that trade, and he was very proud of it.
Yeah. So my charity is the Special Operations Warrior Foundation, and this was a charity that's set up to take care of special operation warriors who are injured or killed in the line of duty. A lot of these guys are, a lot of these operators are constantly away from their families when they become injured or when they're killed in combat. There's not a lot to help out with the families immediately. So what this foundation does is, one of the first things is they take care of the family immediately, giving them a check, whether it's for travel or anything that they need to go be by the warrior's bedside when they're injured. They come stateside. And then the charity also sets up scholarships for the children of fallen operators. So it's something that, as somebody who served, it's definitely something that's near to me, and, making sure that we take care of all of our guys who come back. So.
Awesome stuff, Pete. And Tim, over to you.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's funny because I was about to say, but the Saquon pick surprised me, because who's going to take, a rookie running back #1 overall? I mean, that's just silly. And then it hit me. I did that with Zeke his rookie year, and it worked out really well. So I'm getting ready to sit here and trash like this, this pick about this. Like, and I was like, Jesus Christ, I just did that. But it was different. And it's probably different because Saquon probably actually has more overall talent. But landing spot's a big deal. So, I was surprised. But then once I heard the explanation, I thought that was actually really damn cool. And I tried to figure out a way to do something similar, and I just lacked the creativity. I was like, I want to work this in to be in a charity league, but I figure the fact that if I donate money to it and play, that's being charitable in and of itself, because it's basically giving my money away, because it's not going to win. So come on.
Oh,
yeah.
I was wondering why your draft was turning out that way. I didn't know that you just already expected to hand that money over.
How far are we into this and it got savage already? I liked you, Pete. I liked you better when we couldn't hear you. And so, kind of changing lanes to get sort of serious. My charity this year is the Trevor Project. And so I have an 18-year-old son and then a 17-year-old son who was actually born female. And about 2.5 years ago, I got this text, Dad, I need to talk to you. And it was essentially him, and it was her at the time coming out as like, I've always been different. I felt a certain way. You're my best friend. I need to tell you something. I'm transgender. And I was always prepared for the I'm gay conversation because we knew, as parents, we know something's up. And so I was totally unprepared. So I had to run out and learn a bunch of things at the last second. And one of the things that I learned was within the transgender community, because of the way that they are treated, there's a really high suicide rate. And so mortality is really, really high. And so the Trevor Project was based off of a film done, it was back in the 90s, I believe. It was pretty early on. And no, it's 98. And so essentially it covers the social, peer, and family pressures that LGBTQ teens face, and so especially transgender. And so Trevor Project, their whole point is having an outreach, a phone number where teens who are feeling the pressure can reach out and call, especially when they're suicidal, and have somebody to talk to, somebody to kind of help them work through the difficulties of being not just different, but really different as far as what society views things right now. And so it's a really important charity to me. It's a very personal thing, and even just talking about it in the last year or so has been really healing for me. And so pretty psyched that we get to do something that involves fantasy football, something I'm passionate with, something that my family is deeply ingrained in, which I'm also passionate about, obviously. So there we go.
That's really awesome to hear, Tim. And that gets really to the heart of why I created this league. And just to give a little backstory there too. Before I started writing for 2QBs, I was talking to Sal, who approached me about writing for them. And initially I said no. I thought I was going to be too busy with starting school. But I kept the conversation open with Sal because I heard great things about him and wanted to get to know him better. And one of the things that started to come up was, and I forget how it came up in our conversation, but basically how I felt really terrible about being a football fan because of all the concussion issues, domestic violence stuff, other stuff involved, not to get too heavy on the pod, but something that Sal really harped on was the fact that 2QBs, or at least he personally, felt similarly, but he was using some of his articles to raise awareness and money for domestic violence, and NCADV, I believe is the acronym, the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And that really spoke to me, and that made me want to work for him, but also made me realize I wanted to do more with the limited platform that I had. And so out of that came this league. And, it's punny, it's Justice League of Superflexers, but it is a Justice League because we're trying to be heroes that we can be within our own community. So I'm really thankful that you guys all joined. It's been a blast having this startup so far. I couldn't think of a better group of guys to have this draft with, and you were all pretty much hand selected. I did put I'm not even kidding when I said I had something like 30 to 40 applications in, and I might do the league again in the future, and it's not a disservice to anybody else who applied, but you guys really stood out to me as I wanted to be in a league with all of you.
We appreciate it, Bobby, and thank you for setting it up.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I wanted to say thanks too, Bobby, because I know right when you set it up, you made a donation actually to everybody's charity. And I just want to think, that was really something cool. So, yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to bring that up. I get enough attention. It's fine. Don't worry, guys. But another thing so I don't know how much you guys have listened. I know Pete listened, but what we typically talk about on this podcast is quarterbacks. We're not so much a Superflex as just a quarterback focused podcast. And something that happened, I'm not sure you guys heard, but Andrew Luck threw a football. Maybe he shoveled it forward, and it was a high school sized football. But Brian actually took him in our draft, and I was curious, Brian, you took him before that video came out, right?
I did.
Did that make you feel better? Did you feel bad about the pick to begin with at all? Or was it more like, oh, I know Andrew Luck's going to be the guy, and this video of him throwing a high school football has no bearing on how I feel about him whatsoever?
Yeah. So for me, the video is what it is. I mean, I'm glad to see him throwing a football, even if it's not an NFL football. But in, where I selected him, I think I got him at the end of the 5th round, maybe, if I remember correctly. But
that sounds right.
But no, for me, I considered him earlier than that. I don't know what it is, but I just feel like the guy's coming back, and when he gets back, if he's 85% of the player he was, he's going to be better than most of the quarterbacks in the league, in my opinion. So it was just a matter of how far can I let him go. There's obviously a lot of talent in the league, and we're playing with a bunch of guys that know what they're doing. So I wasn't sure how far to let him go. I had considered him I was a bookend. I was the first pick overall, obviously. So I was picking back to back. I'd considered him like 20 some odd picks earlier, and then didn't take him. And I was just waiting, just hoping he wouldn't get selected. And then he didn't. So I went ahead and took him where I did. I've kind of been on Andrew Luck here in the last couple of months. I just have had a hunch that he's going to be back and he's going to be good again. And this is the cheapest you're going to be able to get him. In terms of on our podcast, we talk a lot about trade value. So, I think this is the cheapest you can go out and get him in leagues. But where you really see the discount, in my opinion, is in startup drafts. And to get a player the caliber of Andrew Luck, yes, there are definitely question marks right now. We maybe got an answer with the video. I'm not sure if we did or not really. But I'm expecting him to return to form and start the season in week 1. So if he's 85 to 90% of what he's been in the past, I think I got a deal on him. So
Tim, Pete, what are your takes on that?
I don't doubt that Andrew Luck can throw a football. I don't think we'd even be seeing him. And let's be honest, it's not like he just started throwing the football. This is the first time we're seeing him throw the football where people can see him throwing the football. Because they're trying to send a message. They're trying to create, their narrative, and that's fine. But there's a big difference between throwing a football and then throwing a football and a defensive end taking your head off, driving you into the ground onto that shoulder.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that worries me is when you look at these shoulder injuries, Luck's was extensive. I mean that was a long time to be sidelined by an injury. And so I want him to be better. I'll take him at 85%. But what I would worry about is the contact, and he's going to be getting it, and other teams are going to know it. And so I want it's like I want Luck, but if it was me, I couldn't take the risk. When he's healthy, I agree, man. He is out of this world. But that injury seemed pretty substantial. And as much time as he took rehabbing, I'm just really worried about that contact. So I would probably take him way later than anybody else would have. I just don't like that risk.
Real quick before we kick it over to Pete's thoughts on Andrew Luck. So Andrew Luck was actually my first man crush in football. He helped me win my first ever football league. I had watched football before that, but never played until his rookie season. And I drafted him, and everyone said, oh, rookie quarterbacks don't do anything. And then he just instantly dominated the league pretty much. But I've been cheating on him because now, Jimmy Garoppolo and his handsomeness, I just can't resist him. We talked about it on this podcast. We talked about it on another podcast last night. I'm really happy that Jimmy Garoppolo did not show up to my wedding because I can't make any promises that I wouldn't have run off with him. Now we'll kick it over to Pete's take on Andrew.
This just took a really odd turn.
Yeah, welcome to the Afterburners pod. It's a little bit of a different take on football where we like to talk football, but we also like to get weird with it.
Like which quarterbacks do we want to date? Before Pete grabs
no. We've 100%. So all right, now that I've mentioned it, QB handsomeness rankings top 5.
Oh, jeez, here we go.
That was actually an episode, I'm pretty sure.
Wait, you're gonna make us do our top 5?
Yeah, do your top 5. Go ahead.
Oh my God, that's a lot of pressure.
All right, fine. Number 1. All of them make it easier for you guys. Number 1.
We could do 3.
All right. Who wants to lead this off?
I mean, it's got to be Jimmy G, right? I mean, he's up there.
Sam, my co-host, doesn't agree with you. He thinks Cam is the most attractive.
No, come on. I would say
his hats are too
Dude,
terrible.
that smile though. I mean, I can see that with Cam.
Oh, he does have.
I mean, he's got those. I mean, he's got a good smile.
He's
always smiling.
It's a fashion sense. You can't take him anywhere.
Also, what you guys
gonna
didn't
have a
know,
giant hat on, or
the Justice League of Superflexers has bonus points for handsomeness.
Oh man, I can tell you everybody. It's not.
It's not Ben Roethlisberger.
It's not Ben Roethlisberger. It's definitely not Sam Darnold because he looks like a hobbit.
No, Sam Darnold looks exactly like the villain from The Incredibles.
Oh my God,
Sal was talking about it.
Yeah.
He does.
Mysterio or whatever he called himself.
Oh,
Yeah,
he does.
He really does. This is peak off-season football right here, guys. But let's throw it back to Pete. We can come back to this, but let's throw it to Pete and see what he has to say about Andrew Luck.
Well, at this point in the peak off-season activity where we were counting down the days since he last threw a football, I'm sure if Andrew Luck threw a pie at this point, everybody would have gotten excited. So the fact that it was a football-shaped object, that's great. Honestly, if he was still there, I selected at 507 and I went with Baker Mayfield. And I was ready to nab Luck at that point. I had already gotten Trubisky. And so I figured if I could at least have Trubisky and, maybe Luck, that would be something really stellar at that point. But yeah, I think right around that point is a great spot for him in a super flex. And that value is only going to start going up now as August gets closer and he's throwing something, at least on a camera. Although T.Y. Hilton looked like he gained a lot of weight to play in the slot in that video.
So that was my takeaway too. T.Y. Hilton did look a little thick.
Yeah.
Like thick with 2 C's, like he has nice
triple C's.
And I want to add to like what I was talking about with Luck is there's an article in the American Journal of Sports Medicine about these type of injuries in quarterbacks. And right now, since the last time, I think the thing is important to remember is since the last time Luck played, everything he has done rehab-wise has been based off of non-contact rehabilitation, non-contact practice. It's just him trying to get back in the game. And so if he was going to get hurt or if he was going to regress at all back to his injured state, it would have been due to overuse. And this article is really interesting because overuse injuries are only responsible for 14% of injuries with NFL quarterbacks. And 77.4% of injuries are responsible to contact plays. And so when you look at, and specifically passing plays, so passing plays where their contact is responsible for almost 80% of injuries. And so no matter how far Luck gets into the preseason, and he's looking great until that contact is there, it's still a pretty nominal number to really base anything on, in my estimation. And so I'm still just trying to justify my own pushing him down. But
I honestly hope that Brian's right, because when I started at DLF, one of the first pieces I wrote was basically how much I love Andrew Luck and how he's a great dynasty quarterback and how everyone's too low on him. And then there was all these reports, he's still not throwing. And I went, oh, I'm not worried. Another month later, he's still not throwing. Not worried. Another month later, he's still not throwing. publicly not worried, privately very worried.
Now we have a new president.
Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't thrown the ball since then. No, Tim, I think you make some good points there, and I obviously the offensive line there isn't exactly anything to write home about either. So, so that's a fair point, and to wonder if they can keep him upright and from being hit so often, which is probably what led to some of this. I mean, to begin with, so that's a valid concern, absolutely, and I don't really have anything to counter that per se. I just felt at that point in the draft, the reason why I selected him, at that point in the draft, to me personally, it felt like it could be a value. I have Deshaun Watson in this league too. I got him a little bit earlier. He also is coming off an injury. I'm not as concerned about that one as I am about the Luck injury, obviously. But so this is my QB2, at least to start the season. And I think for me, I just felt like it was a place where I felt comfortable. Yes, there's absolutely risk, and that definitely played on my mind and whatnot when I selected him. For me, though, I just felt comfortable enough with the risk at that point, given the potential reward if he does return to form.
Oh, yeah. If he returns to form, you have one of the best QB1s in the league, and you got him, where'd you say, fifth round?
Yeah,
fifth round. So
49th overall. Yep.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. So,
yeah, you got a great value there. And speaking of great value, that's actually a good segue for our next segment. So I know I asked Brian this question earlier. You guys didn't quite see the show sheet until we started up about a minute or two before, but if you had to pick a best value pick in the draft, so that can be anywhere you want, but usually with value picks, I'm not looking at the first 3 rounds because you can look at pretty much anywhere in the first 3 rounds and go, yeah, that was a good guy to grab there. But the best value pick in the draft, who is it and why?
Yeah, so I guess since I looked at had a chance to see the show sheet, I'll start off on this one. And actually, it's going to be a good one because my value pick is one of the guys in this podcast. So nice. My value pick is one of Tim's players, which I'm not even sure that he actually selected.
Man.
given the circumstances surrounding all of this, but anyways, the guy where I was shocked.
You're gonna say Geis.
I'm not gonna say Geis. Actually, I'm gonna say Tevin Coleman, okay. 86 overall, and this is a guy who I think most people are expecting him to move on from Atlanta next year, or potentially get the job there, depending on what happens with Freeman. I don't know exactly the money terms and dead money and all that stuff, so I don't know how that affects them per se, but I think Coleman is going to get an opportunity next season to be a feature back. He's already he's been an RB2 as a backup running back essentially in Atlanta his entire career so far. So I mean, I think if he gets that opportunity, he's a guy that he could definitely put up RB1 numbers, especially if he goes to, a friendly system for his talents. So for me, I think the value that I saw really jump out was Tevin Coleman at 86th overall.
Do you guys have answers? If not, I can go ahead of you and buy you some time.
I might be inflating Tim's ego a little bit, but at pick, I think it's 134 in the 12th round, he went and snagged Carlos Hyde. And so this is a dude who just the previous season put up some pretty solid numbers on a bad San Francisco team. You're going to be going over to a Browns team that's much improved, better offensive line. And we saw the year before last, so 2016, when Chip Kelly was running that 49ers offense, Carlos Hyde put up some of his best numbers running out of shotgun. And we know now with Todd Haley leaving Pittsburgh, coming up to the Browns, Todd Haley loves running out of the shotgun. And I think that's going to be huge for a guy you just got at the 12th round. Maybe 1 or 2 years out of it, but for a guy in the 12th round, you can't beat that. That's a huge value right there.
So speaking of those 2 picks, so the Tevin Coleman pick, Brian's actually right. And so I got this last second phone call, hey, we need you It was for work, and essentially I was going to be out from Friday at 5 p.m. until Monday morning at 6 a.m. And I was just like, are you shit? Like, I have so many drafts going on right now, which my boss was really sensitive to, obviously. And so I sat there and I made a queue of 120 players. It took me all day. You guys had to deal with me like talking about this thing. It took me like 6 hours to like do my own like sort of rankings on where I thought people would get drafted. Tevin Coleman was one of those people like where I looked at where sort of MFL had him and where I carried them over. I was like, nah, it's still too low. And he was one of those guys where you just sort of like, as you kept moving the pick up, you're like, no, move up. Until I moved him up to a position where I went, that just looks stupid compared to all the numbers around him. Like this doesn't make sense. But when I came back Monday morning and like logged in a panic, like, oh my God, what do my teams look like? I was pretty happy to get him. I figured I would get him there, but I was pretty happy about it. And then Hyde, I totally agree with Pete. Hyde reminds me, not exactly, I'm not comparing talent at all. I'm comparing situation, but I'm the old one here. I'm the only one with gray hair. So, some of us grew up watching. Bobby was like 5 probably.
What year was it?
But we grew up watching Barry Sanders on Thanksgiving. God, see, this is why I drink. This is why I don't go on podcasts. You got my old man shirt on, right? Drinking like drink. I'll tell y'all about Barry Sanders. But we all hated life for Barry Sanders because he was so good, but he was just in such a crappy offense. He had the worst offensive line. He had the worst play calling. He's just like, he should have been better than Emmitt Smith, like all the way around. But when I look at Tevin Coleman, Carlos Hyde, it reminds me of that. It's like the situation he came from. And I know he's going into a backfield that has some questions, but man, I think he is clearly the dominant back there. And so grabbing him at 1202 felt like a good pick. So appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, and by the way, depending on what year you were talking about, I easily could have been 5.
That was 91.
Oh, I was just born. Literally.
Dude, I'm not lying. I think the era of the Cowboys Lions Super Bowls, Thanksgivings would have been 90, 92 in that range. Somebody can correct me, but I think it's about right.
I was born in July of 91, so I would have just been kicking.
Nobody asked you, man. All right.
Those Lions teams too were so bad. And the year Barry Sanders retired. So the year he retired, we my dad finally got us season tickets, the Kingdome with the Seahawks. The Lions were coming out. Barry Sanders retires, and the Lions have, who's some fullback who runs for 100 yards on the Seahawks. Brian Schellinger or something like that. I can't remember the guy's name right now, but he's a fullback from 2000, from 99. So don't fault me for that. But just being so frustrated that I'm gonna get to see Barry Sanders, and instead it's this guy who just tears up the Seahawks that nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah, that's rough. I always hate when someone gets subbed out, but I still need to give my best pick, and I'm actually going to give that to Sal, and I swear this is not me sucking up to my boss at all, but also, Sal, please take note of this. And it's at 12:09, Sal took Rashard Matthews, and Rashard Matthews is someone that I think is continually underrated for what he brings to Titans offense, and everyone's all in on Corey Davis, and I don't blame them. Corey Davis was a great prospect, but the thing is, he's still young and learning the game, and Marcus Mariota, I think, is someone, especially with Matt LaFleur there, and supposedly they all have healthy hamstrings, because last year literally every player on that team would take like 2 steps and their hamstring would give out. So supposedly they all have hamstrings that are healthy this year. And I'm very bullish on the Titans offense. And because of that, I think getting Rashard Matthews in the 12th round of a best ball is something very good. And it is dynasty, and he's a little bit older, but he'll probably have 2 or 3 seasons of at least flex value, I think. Feel free to disagree, although you guys are nodding your head, so clearly Sal did something right there.
Yeah, I think he did. I mean, I don't have anything to add to that. I just agree.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're talking about a 12th round pick. And like you said, Matthews was the leading receiver on that offense last season. So, yeah, you're getting a top kind of guy on an offense in the 12th round. Why not?
Yeah. And for worst pick, so I have to kick this off because
wait, I didn't get to give my best pick, man. Come on.
Oh, I thought you did give your best pick. I apologize. Go ahead.
I got picked for best pick twice.
You're gonna pick yourself.
We're not counting. Right? So I'm gonna pick Tim Turner with. No, because this pick actually did really sort of surprise me. And it was, how do you say Mike's last name? Zingwan?
I actually have no idea.
So
That's a great question.
It looks like Michael Zingwan. Zingon.
I think it's Zingoni. I think it's Italian.
Zingoni. You see one of those things that clears the ice on hockey games? So I knew it was close, but I loved his pick at 309. He got Matt Stafford. And at that point in time, I actually kicked off the quarterbacks with Aaron Rodgers at 111. And when you look at the quarterbacks that went after that, you had Aaron Rodgers at 111. Right after, and again, this is a super flex league. Carson Wentz, Cam Newton, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes.
You're forgetting the
Jimmy
first
Garoppolo.
quarterback off the board there, by the way, before Rodgers.
There was a quarterback before that?
Yeah, the
yes, there was.
the true
Dangerous.
QB one.
The true GOAT of Dynasty.
Oh, God, Russell Wilson. Yeah, I forgot. I guess I wanted to forget that. But yeah, you got Russell Wilson over Aaron Rodgers. This is awesome. It's hard to argue with that offensive line and that receiving core, and yeah, I mean,
there's just so many reasons to love Russell Wilson.
No, there really is. But Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, it's like all of a sudden Jimmy Garoppolo. It's like we had 7 quarterbacks go before Matt Stafford, and Matt Stafford's a badass, and he's not old. And I really actually like his opportunity this year. And so I think he's going to return value way over that, like QB7, I think is where he was picked there. So Mike, there you go. I got you as my favorite.
Yeah, he's always a QB1, if not necessarily a low-end QB1, but Stafford is definitely very reliable for fantasy points, and you don't have to worry about him being in your lineup. So I don't have any arguments there. Do you guys have anything you'd like to add to Stafford? All right, then let me kick off worst pick, because you guys were all joking about it, but I'm actually going to pick myself for Blake Bortles at 89th overall. And the reason why is not what you think. I do not think that Blake Bortles is a bad player. In fact, I actually think that he has the opportunity to be a good player, and he started to show signs last year. It's more, I was worried about getting a quarterback 3 because I picked Josh Rosen as my quarterback 2, and I wanted to make sure I got some points this year, and I went, oh man, there's going to be a huge QB run here. Everyone's just going to go quarterback crazy. I kind of want the young – I was debating between him and Case Keenum, and I went, I kind of want the younger guy though. So I took Blake Bortles, and I expected like Case Keenum, Eli Manning, and all those other guys to follow within about a round or so. Case Keenum went about a round later, so that wasn't too bad. But then Eli Manning, and there's one other quarterback I'm blanking on that's startable, went 2 rounds later. So I missed out on some like running back 2 types. I don't feel that much regret about it, especially because, just quick aside, the charity that I'm playing for is the World Wildlife Fund, and I adopted a polar bear named Blake Bortles. So it was only fitting that I took Blake Bortles. And really, okay, so my wife is in the room, and she's mad because she bought me as a present the adoption of the polar bear. And then I decided to name it Blake Bortles. So she needs the credit. She's getting the credit. Shout out to Coop to Grace B on Twitter if you want to give her credit for adopting me a polar bear. But I think, so it's super flex, so I value quarterbacks more than most people, and I know that. I didn't used to, but I really think that if your position is set at quarterback, you don't have to worry so much in the future about trying to get these rookie quarterbacks. And so you can fill in with running backs and wide receivers through the rookie draft. And that's where my head was at. But I'm still going to knock myself because I did let my fandom of Blake Bortles make me reach for him just a little bit. So there you go. That's the one time I will ever say anything negative about Blake Bortles. And if anyone ever brings it up again, I'll deny I said it.
Yeah, but we can like turn it into like a mix. We can turn it into like a remix, like sound.
Like auto-tune the news, auto-tune
like Bortles is my worst pick. Awesome. I want to pick on Sal for a second. Only because we picked Sal as one of the best ones. I'm going to do my worst, and that is with the quarterbacks that were on the board at pick 70. Sal took Lamar Jackson, so Baltimore quarterback. And the thing I didn't like about this is the quarterbacks that were still available. You had guys like Ben Roethlisberger, Derek Carr, and I know some of these guys. This is a dynasty league, so we're looking at longevity. So there is that. I get it. But Phillip Rivers around that area, Alex Smith, which is surprising that Sal didn't take. The thing that worries me with Sal's pick is that when you look at, like, especially with the news coming out of camp that all of a sudden Joe Flacco is kind of like, wait a minute, I actually have some like challenge here. Like Flacco really does. We've said this before, but now it's actually true. He really does have the best receiving core that he's had in a while. But he also has a pretty decent O-line. He's got some backs can really block. I mean, he has really good pass blocking coming out of the backfield. I think Flacco is actually, and he's not like a guy that gets hurt all the time. And so I'm not convinced. Look, I mean, I love Lamar. Don't get me wrong, but like he's going to be the next Michael Vick, but better. But I don't think they're in a rush to start him or play him a ton. And so I think Flacco is actually going to take the majority of the snaps this season. So I wouldn't want to pull somebody like Lamar in that early unless I really was trying to build for the future at quarterback. So what do you guys think?
I think, like you said, it's a great pick for the future. Flacco still has a lot of money. I don't know how much of it's still guaranteed. I haven't looked at that over the cap recently, but you're talking about, especially when you calculate that he's got that Konami cheat code where he's got the rushing ability for fantasy in the super flex where you're going to get those added points, kind of almost like having an RB2 on top of what he's going to get you as a passer. So I think I don't know who his other quarterbacks were at that point, but I mean, if you're talking maybe that's his QB3 or something, and he snags him there, I'm all for it. I mean, I picked Josh Allen in round 10, so I can't hate on anybody's quarterback pick too bad at that point. No, I think Lamar Jackson is a huge upside play, especially if you're looking at kind of the future. You can stash him a little bit and maybe get, say a Tyrod Taylor is your fourth, drafted quarterback later on. So why not make that big swing for it? So,
yeah, all I know, and I agree with Pete that it is a play for the future. And I don't have too much to add to. Actually, I have two things to add, I guess. One is, yes, it's Flacco's best receiving core in a while, but it seemed like the Ravens thought it was like 2014 or 2015 and went, oh, let's get all these guys who were good that year and put them on our team and just throw darts at it and hope that it works out. The second thing is, I don't know that I would question the guy who's Mr. 2 QBs himself about a quarterback.
I know.
That's pretty
bold.
That takes some gumption, Tim.
This is best pick in the draft, Quantum Tim Turner right here. So,
yeah. But I mean, you look at his other quarterbacks was like Patrick Mahomes, Tyrod Taylor. So, yeah, I mean, I guess
was Mahomes. I thought Anthony was
Mahomes and was Sal Mahomes? No, I think Sal took Mahomes.
No, Sal took Mahomes and Tyrod. He's got McCown, Chad Kelly, and then Lamar Jackson. So
yeah, he got some guy that can carry him through this year probably. And if Mahomes and Jackson hit their ceiling, he's absolutely in the money in Superflex.
Yeah, well, I just my concern would be so Mahomes. Oh yeah, I'm all in on Mahomes. Tyrod, I'm not real sure what's going to happen in Cleveland. What happens if Baker jumps in? What happens if Flacco is Flacco and stays for the year. I mean, now all of a sudden you got one quarterback.
Yeah, and I looked it up, by the way, and Flacco has at least, it'd be 16 in dead cap, 16 million in dead cap to release in next season.
Ooh.
But
Yeah.
the thing you do have to consider is that there's always seems to be a team that's looking for a bridge quarterback, just because there's not enough good quarterbacks in the league to actually be starters on every team. So every year there seems to be someone who's looking for someone that they can just go be a game manager for us for a year while we figure it out. So it's possible that Flacco could be a starter on another team, which, by the way, makes me think that Flacco is a value in super flex leagues right now because everyone's so down on him.
You just talked yourself into drafting Joe Flacco.
He's already off our board.
Hashtag elite right there.
I could talk myself into drafting anyone. I really could. I can make a case for any player and convince myself that it's the thing to do.
Wait, what about Blake Bortles?
I don't have to. Can't trick me. Tom Coughlin coaching him. Come on, Doug Maroney. All those receivers he has to throw to. I mean, all those WR2 types. What could possibly go wrong? But honestly, I do like Blake Bortles, as you guys know. But let's kick it over to Pete. Pete, what was your worst pick of the draft?
I was kind of surprised that you guys let Jimmy Graham fall all the way to the 11th round. I know it's not really a tight end premium or anything, but Trey Burton's ahead of him, and Njoku, who I'm a big fan of. OJ Howard went ahead of him. Somebody took Kyle Rudolph. An injured Hunter Henry went in front of him.
What?
So yeah. I got where did I pick him at? Jimmy Graham, pick 127.
So Pete's worst pick of the draft is collectively burning the group of us for not making a specific pick. I'm more saying, look how great my pick was.
Is that what you're saying, Pete? Is that the worst pick is everybody's pick but yours?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here and I had to sit and watch Jimmy Graham be the softest 6'7", 270-pound man in the NFL for years, dodging any type of contact, which is why he hurdles people, because he's afraid of running over 5'10" defensive backs for some reason. But he's going to Green Bay. He's got Aaron Rodgers throwing to him. All these red zone touches now where he can do what he wants, which is stay away from the line of scrimmage, flex out, and basically be a giant slot receiver. I got him in the 11th round. So
Pete's worst pick of the draft is everyone else failing to draft a player he drafted. Just so we're clear.
But I can't argue with him because, I got in this argument with Michael Salfino earlier, and it's funny because I just looked at my Twitter real quick, just because I can't not look at Twitter every 30 seconds, and literally the top of my feed is Michael Salfino going, "Well, we agree on Rudolph." So it's like we argued about Jimmy Graham. I'm with you, man. I think he is it. God, I mean, with a halfway decent quarterback that some of us have heard of. An offense that's explosive, and he always he always ran the same routes, but that's not going to be the same. They're going to use him differently. He's going to learn to run different routes. It's just, he's going to be an end zone monster. And so, everybody else that didn't draft him ahead of you is a dumbass.
I'm with you guys too, because they didn't.
But that's one pick the one pick I got right, so I have to maybe celebrate it because all my other picks were not that great.
In Seattle, they also asked him to block, right? So he's not really going to have to do that on Green Bay.
There was no reason to trade for him, and then they had this great plan that they're going to make him this inline tight end, and that he'll suddenly become a blocker, and he just would get rocked every game, pushed around by a defender. And he couldn't anchor anywhere. And it was the most frustrating thing to watch every game.
Yep. Sorry, Brian. Go ahead. We kept cutting you off there.
That's okay. I feel very proud. I did not select a tight end, period, before Jimmy Graham went off the board. So I'm excluded from this.
It's just that range. I'm looking at that range. If you selected Hunter Henry's not even playing this year. He tore his knee and he went before Jimmy Graham.
Listen, I had Engram and Rudolph, all right? You can't blame me for not selecting Jimmy Graham.
Oh, God, my wife just walked in here. I'm about to get bossed around.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome.
Don't you embarrass me in front of my friends again.
There's a look of fear.
That's true.
It's because I got in the good stuff, and she like raised it up and looked at me like, "Really?" I'm like, "I'm podcasting. It's serious. It's my first appearance. I need to celebrate."
Brian, what was your worst pick of the draft? And I guess I should have clarified. You really should pick a single draft instead of burning everybody.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, so I'm actually gonna go after one of Sal's guys here too. No offense, buddy. Dion Lewis for me at 76th overall was a little bit of a surprise, just because of where he went. Two things. Number one, in relation to Derrick Henry, and number two, I'm not sure. I mean, I really don't know which one of those guys is going to end up being the guy in that backfield. I really don't. I don't know how they're going to be. I mean, I think you can tell how they're going to be used. It's just which one of them is going to be on the field more often than not. So for me, that one's a little bit confusing. I understand the pick for sure in a best ball, especially. But I just, that felt a little bit high to me there. That's one thing when you're talking about worst picks in this draft. I don't think there have been too many that have really been what? I mean, everybody's pretty on point in this draft. So for me, this was much harder to do on this end of things than it was the best picks portion of this section here. But yeah, if I had to select one, I guess it would be that one. But again, I can understand why. But that's the one I'm going.
That's the nicest way to say someone had the worst pick I think I've ever heard.
Yeah,
and I do what I can, all positivity, right?
You started with bless his heart.
Honestly,
while you were talking about that though, something hit me. So is this a realistic comp? So you have Henry and his running style, right? Now, what about compared to the Atlanta backfield? Is that a similar situation?
For me, it's not, because I think Freeman is a heck of a lot better of an athlete than Derrick Henry is. So I mean, I'm assuming that's where you're going with that.
Yeah.
Freeman and Henry,
Freeman,
Lewis, right? Lewis and Coleman. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see the Lewis to Coleman for sure. But to your point, I mean, that's Lewis went around earlier than Coleman. And I've liked what I've seen personally. I've liked what I've seen out of Tevin Coleman more so than I have Dion Lewis. Plus, he doesn't have an injury history like Lewis does. Now, didn't seem to hamper him too bad last year, but I'm just a little. I'm not sure what Tennessee's going to do with their backfield, and I want to see that offense. I'm excited about that offense. I think it's going to be the best offense that we've seen in Tennessee in a long time. So I just don't know exactly how all of it's going to shake out. So.
And subtracting Hyde, I thought about this earlier just because I'm in a rookie draft, but I think a better comparison of Henry to Lewis would be Chubb and Duke Johnson. I kind of see a similar breakdown happening there, but that could just be me in my head for whatever reason. And I think it was because I thought about trading Derrick Henry for Nick Chubb, and then I really had to think about both their scenarios. I went, you know what? I'd rather have Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Well, Nick Chubb makes me really sad. That's a very sad thing, because if that dude didn't wreck his knee against Tennessee, we're talking about him like we're talking about Saquon Barkley, generational talent. I mean, that guy was unfreaking believable before he wrecked his knee, and then he came back and he was unbelievable anyways. But obviously, that injury is in the back of your mind about him. But my God, was he a beast? He was unbelievable before the injury. It's a shame that he had to go through that.
And with that guy, like I've seen Tevin Coleman, like he doesn't run people over, but I've seen him take contact and at least get some forward momentum. And I remember actually watching Duke Johnson get hit by a gust of wind.
He did like 3 flips.
Yeah, and And he lost 3 yards, but it's cool because it was PPR and I still got a point.
I did want to point out here, though, that we were talking about the worst pick, and not only did Brian manage to make it the nicest way possible, but then he managed to put in some like actual football analysis for a bit there to distract from the fact that he had to talk negative about someone. Very, very well done, Brian. And part of the reason I did that, by the way, was to create some rivalries in this league. Everyone's been too nice so far. We need to get some smack talk going. Pete's got the right idea. You know, we got to get some rivals going. Otherwise, we're all just going to be too nice to each other. Although there has been some sniping. I think that was a good point you made, that everyone in this draft so far really hasn't made a pick for the most part that I've gone, what? It's gone, oh, man, that's a guy I was thinking about maybe a round later, or I was thinking about them now. So it's really been within a good range, I think.
Well, I did trade up just because of Tim's pick of Rashad Penny. I think it was late round 5. So I made sure to get up to get Sony Michel, because I was looking at, I think, I saw kind of maybe a possible run on those young running backs. So I wanted to make sure I got up and got my guy right there. Unfortunately, then that's when I dealt my 7th round pick, and I had a pretty big gap in there. You might say worst pick, but I mean, we're drafting with guys like Tim, Brian. Honestly, I respect all of you, and
I just appreciated that you said Tim first, because the TBL or the TLDR of this podcast so far has been Tim, God of Drafters,
yet still owned by his wife.
Tell me about it. You can't just leave me alone for one podcast. I was looking around going, seriously, like I'm being reasonably audible. I'm wearing pants at the counter. And she comes in and she looks at the bottle that I have, and it's like, really, that bottle? It's like, God, seriously? But
go ahead.
She's so much better looking than me that I can't say anything, because all I can possibly do is move down from here. It's like trading draft picks. I'm like, I guess I'll give you my first rounder for, what's that? Tannehill? Take it.
Oh, my word.
One person who's gotten a lot of the guys who I've been trying to move for is Justin, and it seems like every round he snagged somebody just ahead of me that I was looking at and hoping was falling. So there's been a lot of great picks, and it's hard to say who's had the worst pick. So
yeah, Justin McCaslin. He was actually one of the people I was going to pick for one of my best ones. It was between the two. God, I wish I could remember which one it was, but yeah, you're right. He's done really well.
Yeah, definitely true.
Bobby, I vote for WWE style promos like every week, every single week. If you want to create rivalries, just
in one league I'm in, we do actually do a matchup of the week, and someone like types it up as if it's like actually a real sporting event that's happening. So maybe we can do something similar if somebody has time on their hands. But I think, and by the way, just so you guys know, this is the longest we've ever recorded, but I've enjoyed it too much to ever really cut you guys off or cut the podcast off. So we're going to start wrapping up here, but I appreciate the great football discussions, as well as the discussions about the God drafter that is Tim and Tim's wife. But now we're going to move into a segment that everyone who listens to the podcast should be pretty familiar with, and that's our Afterburns of the week. If this is your first time listening, maybe you follow Brian or Tim, so you've never heard about the podcast until they retweeted it after it came out. This is the Afterburns of the week, which is basically your opportunity to really just rant about anything that's been bothering you for the past week. In the past, we've talked about fast food service, people walking too slow in New York City, some random places in Canada, Men's Warehouse, the entire city of Cleveland was our first one. So,
the whole city?
The first episode of this show was pretty much dedicated to just entirely taking a dump on Cleveland sports.
Wow.
Yeah, we've gotten a little nicer since then. And it was because Sam was going to a Cleveland wedding, I should say. But yeah, we've gotten a little nicer to the people of Cleveland. But if you guys have a particular one in mind, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, you can go first. If not, I can kick it off. I definitely have one that I've been waiting to get off my chest because we haven't done this for about a month.
Go for it.
All right. So I don't remember if it was in my chat with you guys or someone else. I think it was my chat with you guys. But I mentioned on Twitter too that for whatever reason, street urchins have been like physically harassing me lately. And to the point where like, so I was on my honeymoon, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast. I was in Rome and some guy took his jewelry and started following us, which is like, all right, I get it. That's part of it. But then he kept sticking his jewelry into my back repeatedly to the point where it was like, I don't even want to be out anymore because you just annoyed me so much that like now I'm just worried that someone's going to like shank me while I'm trying to walk around the city. And then I thought it was over, thought that was the only time that would ever happen to me. And I was in Central Park this past weekend after hanging out with my wife's parents. And we passed some guy trying to sell, I believe it was fruit snacks. And he started following us and he smacked me very aggressively on the shoulder. And I'm not a strong guy, so I'm not saying like maybe he just was trying to be friendly and it hurt a bit. That's possible. But it seemed like it was like super aggressive. I'm pretty sure I had a bruise after. So basically, my afterburn is if you're trying to sell someone something and they don't buy it from you, don't go attack them. I feel like that's a pretty simple rule in life. Just don't go attack them. What do you guys got?
Yeah, so I have an afterburn, I guess. So I live 6 miles from Penn State University, and I drive through the campus on my way to work every day. Pedestrian crosswalks are my afterburn.
I love it. I love it.
It is the law, right? So, stop for pedestrians in the crosswalk, but like recognize that I'm driving a half-ton pickup, and if I hit you, you will die. So maybe hustle a little bit. The slow motion, like you think that I'm taking pictures of you in the crosswalk to make the next Beatles album, like hustle a little bit, especially if you are like the 38th person that is crossing in the crosswalk. If you're the first or second person, that's fine. I mean, don't worry about it. I'm usually pretty patient. But if you're 40th in line, hustle a little bit. All right. That's my afterburn.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's such a good one because it's like if an alien culture ever invaded us and saw a crosswalk sign, they would think it meant immortal. So, and don't worry, it's cool. If you just walk here, you're immortal.
I don't have a great burn. The last time I was on, my septic system literally took a poo on us. So we finally have fixed that. And a couple $1,000s later, that was a great way to kick off the year. So pretty much everything's been pretty gravy since then, but not so much an afterbird. But I want to send a huge thank you and a shout out to my mother-in-law who made this amazing Seahawks quilt for me, hand stitched and everything. I put it up on Twitter, and it's all hand done. She did a phenomenal job. So she probably will never hear this, but she's pretty awesome. And so she's Nana to my kids, and thank you, Nana.
Look at this guy. He comes on my podcast, insults Blake Bortles, doesn't follow the rules.
But to be fair, he did lead off with congratulating his Nana with a septic story. And so he tied the Seahawks to a septic story.
He also, I mean,
which
we just signed Ryan Grigson. Ryan Grigson. They brought Ryan Grigson onto the team for talent evaluation, who built one of the worst rosters in the NFL in Indianapolis. And now you put Brian Schottenheimer in charge of the offense. And it's fitting that they drafted Rashad Penny, who can't pass block either, to protect Russell Wilson. So,
Pete, you're not making me feel great about my Russell Wilson pick at 108.
But I tell you what, you are reaffirming my Chris Carson trutherism all day long.
He's getting a lot of great publicity right now, and that's somebody who you can stash late, and that's absolutely.
I'm the biggest Chris Carson truther out there, and so we'll see how that goes. So, mine is mine's traffic related as well because I drive so much for work, and most of it is highway. And I'm a pretty considerate driver. Like if I'm in the passing lane, and there's a couple hundred yards between the car I just passed and you're getting behind me, and I can tell, I'm not going fast enough and you are, I'll get over in between cars and let you go around, then I'll get back over. But what I can't handle, what I cannot stomach is when there is a line of people in the passing lane and we're all passing people at a reasonable speed. We're, a couple car lengths behind each other doing, 75, 80 and a 70, and we're passing people, but it's not fast enough for you, the dipshit in a Geo Metro 5 speed that thinks, like 95 is reasonable. And every single time you ride up on my ass, and wait, is this a family show? I can say ass.
You can curse on the show. We do it all the time.
And you're behind me, and then you sort of lean over and you look around me, and go, yeah, they're passing cars, but not fast enough for me. And you try to whip around in the slow lane to pass all of us who are in line doing a reasonable passing speed. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you hope. I'm going to create a gap in front of me in the next car to where as you're passing up, you go, yeah, I can squeeze in there. And I'm like, yeah, buddy, you can. You got it. Go for it. And at the last second, I'm going to close that gap. I'm going to close that gap like a damn Broncos defensive end. Right when you think about coming over, so help me God, I'm a Von Miller your ass. And you're going, where'd he come from? And now you're not only stuck behind that slow car, you're stuck behind the guy behind me who picked up my psychic vibes, where I was like, dude, come on, hold the line. Hold the line, brothers. We can't let this asshole in. And yeah, so if you're that guy, you're the one I have a problem with.
It's a pretty good one. I can't say I have too many traffic-related ones, except I'm on the opposite end. So I'm the one in the crosswalk almost getting run over by cars ignoring the crosswalk.
Well, you're
because
not
I live in New York City. Yeah. Oh, no, I hustle. Anytime I'm in the street, even if I have the right of way, I hustle because I live in New York City and cars will run a red. They don't care.
Well, and here's the deal with me. If you hustle, I'll sit there and wait for 30 minutes. If everybody's hustling, I don't have an issue. It's that 40th person that's in line that's the first one that decides to slow motion catwalk across the crosswalk. That pisses me off.
I'm just telling you, send them all to live in New York City for a year. You'll never have that problem again.
They won't be coming back.
Yeah, they're either not coming back or they're coming back much faster walkers. But all right, guys, this has been fun, but it's probably about time to call it an end. I know you all have your wives and kids to get back to, and I have my wife and dog to get back to, but tell the good folks of Twitter and fantasy and the few people that listen, maybe Pete's Nana, where to find you on Twitter and where to find your work and your podcast that you do, and we'll wrap it up.
I think it goes right to Tim. This is the draft winner, so.
Yeah, that was surprising. I appreciate the kind words, guys. Thank you for having me on. This is a ton of fun. And seriously, I think people should follow along with our Justice League draft just because the format's so interesting. Bobby did a really good job of setting up something fun to watch. And so for anybody else that's interested in commissioning something interesting on My Fantasy League, this is a really good draft to check out. And because, I mean, come on, our banner in our group chat has been it's been more fun than really just about any league I've been in. I've been in, as we all know, leagues for a long time, and so back since Barry Sanders, yo, Miami Vice. So yeah,
91 was a good year.
Thank you guys for letting me join. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great having you on, Tim, and I won't hold it against you that you mentioned Barry Sanders in 91. Don't worry. Pete has the
onesie.
I probably was. I probably was in a Giants onesie watching that game somewhere. Pete, where can people find you and your work?
Absolutely. So Pete Lawrence @_Pete Law. You can find me over at DLF or Number Fire.
And Brian?
Yeah, Brian Har and at Brian Har FF on Twitter, at Trade Addicts Pod on Twitter as well. Give us a listen if you get a chance. And thanks, Bobby, for having me on and for having me in this league. It's been a wonderful experience so far, and I'm looking forward to doing this for a long time, hopefully.
Yeah, I appreciate that, guys. This is actually, I think I've mentioned, but this is my first time commissioning a Dynasty Football League. I've commissioned some other leagues, but it's been really cool to see how active it is and how everyone enjoys it. But this has been the Afterburners Pod. You can find us at Afterburners Pod, spelled exactly like it sounds. You can find me at Wrecked Fantasy, not spelled exactly like it sounds. It's REKED Fantasy. That's my initials. I'm not a Twitter tough guy, as John Bosch likes to say. And you can find my usual co-host, Sam Niedermeyer, at the Needy One. That's THENEDI1. I didn't feel like spelling out one there for some reason. Anyway, until next time, keep it classy, Fantasy Twitter. We'll see you on the flip side.